Hello Year 7, this is Friday's lesson. Now this video won't be terribly long because most of it's going to be your work rather than me explaining it. Thank you very much for submitting the work you've been submitting so far. I am definitely enjoying reading it. It's been brilliant to see how some of you are developing so quickly and so much. And even if you're finding it difficult, you are all trying really hard. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because it's a huge, huge deal what you're doing. I hope it's been entertaining for you too, and I hope you're getting something from this. This particular course is quite short. There will be one more lesson after half term, and then we're moving on to the final topic. So just so you know, there's no assessment on this one. I guess it's just so I can keep track of things, and it's useful information to know. It's the Civil War at the end of the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the screen and be a terrible YouTuber once more, and then share this screen. The Civil War. We're there, and this is how the Civil War went down. There are 4 stages. The first stage here is early on. So it actually starts around about 1640, 1642, as you remember from your timeline. 1642, you can see how the country is divided. The red areas represent royalist areas. That's why Nottingham down here is in red. And the green areas are parliamentarian areas. And you can see it's roughly evenly spread. Most of the areas that are green are in the south. Most of the areas that are parliamentarian, sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. Parliamentarian and green. Yeah, no, I got that right. Most of the areas that are royalist, sorry, are in the north. That's where I used to live. That's Carlisle. It's a weird place. There was a siege there during the Civil War, which I note is not mentioned here. But as you can see, the major battle here was Edgehill in October 1642, which, although being a sort of almost royalist victory, didn't really do much. You can see the parliamentarians rapidly conquer most of the West Country. That wasn't a West Country accent. The West Country, that was even worse. The West Country, we're almost there. That's closer. Then there's another battle at Walton Moor in June 1643. And these battles are fairly huge. This will become important in a moment. And as you can see, London stays under parliamentarian control. This, by the way, Marston Moor is a parliamentarian victory and pretty much ends it in the north. By this point, all the sieges around places like Carlisle are finished. Most places have surrendered, and those castles are slighted. When I did my castles thing, I love castles. I hope you understand that. But when you go and visit a castle, you can often see that they've been slighted. Very few castles, or we should call them places of strength, were left after the Civil War still having complete walls. When we go and see Lincoln, I suppose we're not going to see it this year, but when we would have gone and seen Lincoln, do go and visit Lincoln. It's an amazing place. Go and see the castle. It's well worth it. Go on the wall walk. I think you have to pay extra, but it's totally worth the extra. You will see where they slighted the castle. If you're going through the main entrance and then you go around the walls to the back, you'll find a second gatehouse that has been slighted after the Civil War. There's nothing left of the gatehouse. It's just like the curtain wall and nothing inside it, meaning that if there was another attempt to use that as a place of strength, as a fortification for an army, anybody could sneak in and destroy that army on the inside. It was done so because Lincoln was a royalist stronghold. And I just find that sort of thing fascinating because, well, I'm a historian, I can't help it. So anyway, yeah, the sieges were mostly ended, and the final battle at Naseby in June 1645 ends the whole shebang. And as you can see, by that point, the Royalists pretty much control the country. Royalists haven't been defeated, sorry, parliamentarians. The Royalists haven't been defeated full on yet, but it will lead eventually to the execution of Charles I. One of you, in your soothsayings, was really, really specific. You said that Charles I would meet his death. You weren't wrong. So, what's the task? It's all very well me going through that. Is this another timeline task? The answer is no. Because the Civil War saw the introduction of new technology and tactics. It saw the introduction of a new way of fighting wars. Now, you may recall that I am a military historian by trade, and I like talking about battles. I like talking about technology. Not because the reasons you think. Being a military historian means that I'm very interested in societies that put the armies and the technologies forward. Understanding why armies work the way they do actually helps us understand how people lived and why they lived the way they did. It's one of the reasons in history that we study so many wars. It's not about the battles really, and it's not really about the weapons and the tactics, though they are interesting and instructive. It's about why they do what they do. So, keeping that in mind, this is why we're looking at the different tactics and technologies. So, New technology, new tactics. This is going to change the way people think. It's going to change the way people react. Remember, under Elizabeth I, it was all arquebuses and pikemen and spears. So cannon, although important, didn't play a huge role. Cavalry, men on horseback, played the biggest role. However, this technology is now developed. They now have hackbutts rather than arquebuses, and a hackbutt has a much longer range. When we're talking about arquebuses, I always use the example of if I was stood at the front of A5 and I opened fire with an arquebus at the back of the room, I'd probably miss. And if I did hit someone beyond the back of the room into the languages block, I wouldn't even wound them. It would bounce off. A hackbutt has a slightly longer range, and that longer range is, well, it's about from where I am now to, well, I don't know actually how I'd measure that. But if it was an A5, it would about be to the back of the languages block. That doesn't sound like a huge distance, but it's long enough. It's just longer than it takes you to charge. If you're running quickly, it's just too long a way to get in with a pike, which is 18 feet long, if you remember. It's 3 of me. So these battles, because of that, end up being longer. The two sides try and stay apart, and they move around more. And because they are doing this, thousands end up dying because they're just long, drawn-out, meat-grinder battles. Those lucky enough to live have left us detailed descriptions of their experiences. Now remember, this is the 1600s. There isn't a great deal of technology available to stop people getting ill. There's no way of preventing infection. They know you can get infection, but most people are operating using what's called cauterization. You take a red hot metal plate, so called because it literally glows red, and you pour oil onto the affected wounded area, and then you press the metal plate on so it hisses and melts the skin closed. This kind of works, but it traps in any germs underneath the boiling plate. As long as the boiling plate doesn't touch them, that the high temperature would kill germs. So if you didn't take the bullet out, for example, or something was trapped inside because of the bullet entering the skin, then you were likely to die of gangrene. So there's that. Very few people, if they get injured, therefore, live for very long. The sources are going to be from people that lived, and we're going to look at their experiences. Here they are. I'll have to take away my face. There we go. Oh, no, wait, I've pressed the wrong button. I'll try again. Share, take away face. Thank you, the right button. So here we go. Source A is from Sir Richard Bulstrode, and he was a royalist, and he was describing the Battle of Edgehill, which, if you remember, is in 1642. There it is, one of the very early battles of the Civil War. He says, "It is certain that in battle the next man can barely make a true relation of the actions of him that is next to him, for there is such hurry and gun smoke that a man takes notice of nothing but what relates to his own safety." If you've been lucky enough to see a History of Reenactment Society and they've been firing off muskets or cannons, then you'll notice there's an incredible amount of smoke. This is because of the gunpowder. Gunpowder is relatively easy to make, but it is a very smoky material. Imagine, if you will, an early barbecue. So when you start lighting the barbecue and it's trying to catch flame and it's a fairly windy day, there'll be a whole load of smoke. That is similar to the gun smoke from one musket. From a cannon, there'd be more. If it's not a windy day, that gun smoke hangs around. Very quickly, it becomes impossible to, well, make a true relation. It means you cannot see people properly. They get hidden by the smoke, so there's shadows moving about, and therefore people look to their own safety and can't really see what the people either side of them are doing. Battles get chaotic quickly, and no one can really see what's going on. Bear in mind, a hackbutt takes a long time to reload. Luckily, at the back of a hackbutt, here's a Reenactment Society down here, and you can see the hackbutt there. It's called a hackbutt because the butt of the rifle is deliberately heavy and coated in brass, so you can turn it around and use it like a club and beat people over the head with it. Once you've got that chaos with this amount of material, you're going to end up with, well, everybody looking out for themselves. Keep in mind, both sides would have worn very similar uniform. So it'd be very difficult to work out whether the person yelling at you was on your side or not, unless he's part of the unit you were part of, and then you can tell the difference. So you get a feel for what's going on there in Source A. Source B is a parliamentarian, a bloke called William Brereton, and he says the following: "After our cannon was spent, We pushed against each other with pikes and fought having no relief from our cavalry. I don't know why I'm giving in this accent. I can't prove this is where he's from. They attacked with great resolution and boldness and in very good order. And we fought long and fiercely until all our powder and bullet was spent. Afterwards, we fell to hand-to-hand fighting with the butts of our muskets. So what does he mean? What does spent mean? Absolutely. Spent means they've run out of stuff. They've fired all their things. So the cannon run out of ammunition, they run out of gunpowder, and then they push against each other with pikes. Remember how long they are? Of course you do. 18 feet. They're quite long. That's 6 meters. They attack with great resolution and boldness. They're very brave about it, and both sides keep going at it. You can't really scare them away. Old battles in the Middle Ages were generally affairs where you tried to scare your enemy away and make them sort of freak out by shouting at them and hurling abuse and also weapons till they ran away because no one wanted to die. In the Civil War, both sides think they're right. Both sides think they're fighting with God on their backs, and both sides are really passionate about their cause. As a consequence, neither side is really shaken by insults. They're just angered and they keep going. And because it's kind of a grudge match, they attack with resolution and boldness and in very good order. They're very hard to shake. Interesting that he says this. Note how a parliamentarian is talking of the royalists as fighting in good order. You'd think they'd be meaner to one another. They fought long and fiercely till all their powder and bullet was spent. They've run out of ammunition. And then they went to hand-to-hand fighting with the butts of the muskets. So, hack butts. So I see. Account of Colonel Slingsby, a royalist of the Civil War. He said, I saw legs and arms flying apart. Literally. He means literally. If they're flying apart, what's missing? That's right. 'Tis the bodies. They've been shredded. What weapon do you think has been used against these people? Spot on. It's a cannon, because that fires, if you remember from our discussions in class, that fires either a cannonball, hang on, I should probably do this, a cannonball, which is a huge thing, or it fires grape shot, which is loads of small bits of metal packed into the gunpowder and then fired out. Now, at short range, that is absolutely lethal. It's a spreading cloud of speed of sound death, and it will literally shred people up to a range of, well, if it was A5, up to a range of the languages block, you'd be shredded. Beyond that, you'd be very badly wounded. Grape shot was incredibly effective. So cannon were particularly nasty weapons of war at this point. Plus, unlike the Middle Ages, because they were cast in one thing, that all the metal was one piece. In the Middle Ages, they were banded together with leather or bits of metal because they could only cast strips and held together. They often split and broke. Whereas these cannon are cast all in one, and they're really good at their job, which is killing people and spreading their arms and legs apart. Sergeant Poster, a parliamentarian at Naseby, said, it was somewhat dreadful when the bowels and brains flew in our faces. I imagine it was. That sounds terrifying. I mean, it sounds funny reading it now, but for him, that's awful. A Roundhead soldier, that should say soldier, I do apologise, after Naseby in 1645 said the following: I saw the field so strewed with the carcasses of horses and men, the bodies lay slain about 4 miles in length, but most thick on the hill where the king stood. In the morning there was a terrifying sight to behold, when the naked bodies of thousands lay upon the ground squirming, not truly dead. And you begin to get a feel for what warfare is actually like. This is a terrifying vision. What does he mean by strewed? That they're scattered around. Slain? Dead, obviously, yeah, well done. And the idea that they're squirming, well, yeah, they're going to die soon. There's nothing they can do for them. These people will die of infection if they don't die of their wounds, and there's nothing you can do to save them. But they're not dead yet. So I guess you just got to leave them there. Naseby was particularly nasty. Remember, the king lost. The bodies are thick where the king stood because everybody fought literally to the last man. The Reenactment Society here, they base what they do on evidence from the time. So a lot of reenactment societies, if you ask them, will be able to tell you exactly how they learnt about different parts of their uniform and different parts of their kit. And they will know more about how the armies operate off the field as well. So they'll talk about camping, food, the society from which they come. They'll have made a character for themselves. I can almost guarantee it. And if you ask them about it, I'm sure they'll tell you. Now, obviously, with everything that's going on, you can't really do that at the moment, but maybe you've done it in the past. And when things get a little less weird, maybe you can do it again in the future. Source G is from Captain Gwyn, a royalist at the Battle of Edgehill. I am sorry, the formatting's gone a bit weird. A whole file of men, 6 deep, their heads struck off with cannon shot of ours. What does a file mean? If you get a row of people, that is people standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, if you will. So, yeah, a row would be me, and then someone stood here, and then someone stood here, and then there might be more people that way. That's a row. And we could spread out if we're all stood together like this, and we'd all march forwards or fall back, and we'd be a row. A file is when you get a group of people, one standing in front of the other, but all in rows as well. So they're all in one row. Why do you have files and rows? If you remember how pikes are supposed to work, they're 18 feet long, 6 meters, and they're designed to stop horses and men on horses killing you. In fact, hold there a moment. One of the reasons people were so scared of cavalry was this, the Cavalry Saber. And, well, it's a terrifying weapon. Mine's a bit rusty and needs a wash, but you get the idea. If I were to pull out the saber, you can see that if I'm on a horse, sort of stood 2 meters above everybody else, this thing slashing down is going to break skulls. What you don't want is to get close enough to get the pointy end at you or to get the blade cutting into your head. So you want to keep this thing as far away from you as you possibly can. The way to do that, can't believe how rusty this has got. It's supposed to be shiny steel like that, but it's got really rusty. I need to give it a proper wash. I'm going to put that over there. So if you've got a pike and you've got 18 feet of spear between you and the horse, you can just stick them in with the pike and then they don't get up to you and slash you to death, which is kind of important. Sorry, I'll get sat back down now. Point made, I think. So yeah, pikes are important to keep horses away. I did that for a reason. I completely forgot what it is. Hold on, let me just, there we go. God blimey, I'll learn how to do this one day. Oh yeah, files. So you need files of people to protect yourself. You need someone behind you and someone behind them so that all the spears come out and cause points like a hedgehog so that the cavalry can't get too close. I'll get back to the shared screen now. So you've got to stand in files is my point. There we go. But if you fire a cannon at them, well, then you can kill loads of people all at once because there's one behind the other. And Captain Gwyn, a royalist, says they open fire with a cannon and they're able to strike the heads off 6 people at once because they fire at head height, so the bodies presumably crumple to the ground. You begin to get a feel for how awful that cannon is in a time of war, and why those weapons are so powerful. Or if you prefer, John Milton in Source H, a parliamentarian, but not a soldier, said of the cannon is a devilish machination to plague the sons of men. In other words, it's an awful, awful, awful thing, and it is terrifying in its destructive power. And if you see the contemporary woodcut, remember what contemporary means? Of course you do. It means from the time. A woodcut, indeed, it's cut into wood and then you can print it many times. It took me years to figure that one out. No one ever told me when I was at school. So this is carved into wood and then the sticky outy bits are coated in ink and you can print it onto paper. So what we've got here is actually a print of a woodcut, if that makes sense. And a contemporary woodcut of a cannon from one of the many battles of the Civil War. And you get a feel for it. In the background, the church is burning because this is a devilish machination. It's a machine made by the devil to destroy men. And yeah, they are horrendous things. They're massive. Look at the size of this darn thing. Now we come on to the tasks. Now that I've talked through the sources, and that would be the rest of the lesson, which is why this video is so short. I don't intend to try and do what I do in a lesson, but I will talk you through the task very briefly. Question 1 says, study source A, that Richard Bulstrode. What battlefield problems did Civil War soldiers face? What I'd anticipate you to do is to get a quote, not the whole source, and then explain why that's a problem. Why would that be difficult for soldiers? So you go, quote, the source says, this is a problem because, and I reckon you can cover maybe 2, and if you're really, really good at it, maybe 4. There are some of you who have already spotted 3. Question 2. What does source B tell you about how Civil War battles were fought? Remember what I said about the detail in William Brereton's there? I told you stuff earlier in the video. Go back and have a look. So I reckon, again, with quotes, I reckon you can come up with 3 things from that. 3 quotes and explain what that tells you. William Brereton says, meh, and that means meh, because meh. Make sense? Question 3. Study sources C, D, and E. How reliable are they as sources? Whether something is reliable or not is not who wrote it, believe it or not. You'll note that they're from both sides of the battle. So it doesn't really matter whether they're a parliamentarian or a royalist. What matters is whether they're at the time, and they all were. So when we talk about reliability, how do we differentiate between them? Which one's more or less reliable? We can't say, oh, they're all equally reliable, they were all there. We can't do that. And nor do we get to say, one of them's a parliamentarian, so you would have lied because you'd be biased. They're all biased. Tell me something I don't know. What you've got to do instead is work out whether it fits with what you know. So you know a little bit about the technology I explained as we're going through, and does it fit with other sources? Can you find other material on that worksheet to back it up? So you might say source C is reliable because in source F it says, or source D is reliable because in source A it says, and so on. And you give a quote from the source you're saying and a quote from another source that backs it up. They don't have to be specifically correct. They don't have to be specifically the same. Maybe they both give a same feeling. They talk about different aspects of the same thing, and you can make the link, you can make the connection. So don't be too imaginative, but be historically imaginative. It doesn't have to say exactly the same words to be explaining the same thing. You know that in real life, and this is real life just a long time ago. Does it fit with what you know? Does it fit with other material? If it does, then it is reliable. And the more material it fits with, the more reliable it is. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. It's one of those things that would make sense in about 30 seconds in a lesson because I'll be able to bounce off your comments. But in this situation, it's harder. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense to you. Question 4. Study sources B and F, William Brereton and the reenactment. Is source F of any value to an historian? Interesting. So that has to be reliable and it has to be useful. Does it tell us stuff we wouldn't find out by other methods? And I think it does. I hope I explained already about history reenactors. If I haven't, go back, have a look, and if I really, really haven't, it still doesn't make sense, ask. I'll do my best to help. Just put a comment in the show my homework task. Study sources G, H, and J. I know that that one's broken. The word missing is with. So this is with there. Which is more useful in telling you about the role of canon? Now, you've been given a reason why it might be useful. Don't explain what it doesn't tell us. That's all with no bottom. These are very short sources. Rather, to be useful, it has to tell you something that you need to know. You might already know it. And it has to tell you something that is helpful to understand how people saw it at the time. But look, it's the role of canon during the Civil War, not necessarily in battle, but how people saw canon. There are hints in source D and C, and even B, and possibly A as well, come to think of it, about what they have, which one of these sums it up the best. You'll have to go through them each in turn, say what they link to, say what they don't link to, say what they sum up and what they don't, and then make your decision. Question 5, therefore, should be the longest task. Hopefully, that has made sense to you. And hopefully, you are now able to tackle those tasks in, well, your books or another book. I know some of you haven't got exercise books or have run out of space, and that's perfectly fine. Just do it on a different bit of paper. You don't have to submit these, but again, I repeat, I'm really enjoying what you are submitting, and it's really nice to see you develop over time. So please, if you want to, take a picture and submit it that way. Some people have been typing it up, that's also fine, but please don't feel you have to. A picture will suffice, just make sure it looks like I can read it, and I'll do my best. If you need any more help, obviously pause, go back, watch the video again. Thank you very much for watching if you have been. I'm hoping this was interesting. It meant that I could get my Cavalry Saber out, and I'm always pleased to do that one. I usually forget to bring it into school. It lives under the stairs. That's probably why it's so rusty and nasty. Though when I take it into school, I always make sure I get a good wash. I'm getting ahead of myself. Have a lovely Friday. Good luck with the tasks. Stay safe, Year 7, and enjoy your half term that's coming up in a moment. Well, I say in a moment, in a day's time. And we shall see each other again, I hope. Have a lovely half term. I look forward to seeing your work whenever you wish to submit it.